Welcome to Dairyland Frights, a paranormal podcast that covers everything creepy, spooky, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And today, I brought back one of my favorite people and authors, Aaron Ryan. Hey, Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you? Well, actually, speaking of spooky, and because we're in October, how are you?
I love it. Look at this is why I bring him back, man.
That was for free. That one is for free. The rest I charge for.
Uh-oh. I got to get that at the calculator. Man, we're getting up. No, it's awesome. I love Aaron. Go back to our previous episode with Aaron where we talked about creatures who, and correct me if I'm wrong, who have these alien creatures who come down and basically can like freeze you in place and kind of just mess with you while you're frozen in place. If you could show the book, please. That's you go.
Gorgons. See them, not to be trusted, run.
Gorgons.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. I was like, yeah, it's Gorgons, right? Yeah. And so he has Aaron has a series of books that are not only award winners, but where you can find, I imagine on Amazon. Is there any other places other than coming to one of your events when you have that? Is there any other places they could get those?
Yeah, no, I definitely published wide. So it's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, Apple Books, Google Play.
Yeah.
But obviously the best place is direct, straight through moi.
Yes. And again, I can't say enough, being a creative person, it is difficult. Aaron is one of the best. He has a really, really interesting ideas. I have just started reading your first tome. Then I got sidetracked on a bunch of stuff, stupid life. So I got to go back, which is fine. I live in Wisconsin, so winter is coming, and I hibernate, and I basically, Aaron, I grab a bunch of books, and I just go, okay, tonight I'm going to do this instead of freezing my ass off going to whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to be doing that and looking through that because I think it's a great, fascinating story. And, I can't imagine that I will not have a great time reading it. And, again, you will too. And again, support them on all these sites. Independent authors, again, are the lifeblood. If we want to continue to grow the industry, because I know a lot of people say print is dead, whatever. I don't care. Nothing beats a good book and a favorite beverage and just chilling out on the couch and just reading and getting lost in that world rather than worrying about what are my kids doing?
Right.
What's my job going to happen? So that's what Aaron does, and he should be applauded for that, to take your mind off of the crazy stuff that's going on right in the world. Although,
did I miss something? Is there something crazy? I haven't noticed.
Although, Aaron, you're not really helping. Yours isn't about sunshine and unicorns and
it's not
Candyland.
Yeah, it's really not.
It's about Gorgons like trying to take over the world and destroying people and doing nasty things to them. So, okay, maybe I should.
Yeah, no spoilers. Don't give them the whole story. Sheesh.
I'm sorry, we'll give that away. But so the reason I brought Aaron back on is because he has a new series working on, coming out, all that good stuff. So could you update my spooky friends? Like, what's been happening?
Yeah, nothing. It's just been very boring. Crickets here. No, well, there's been so much. So I really, 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 really want to subtract voiceovers from my daily docket. I'm a daily voiceover artist, pro voiceover artist. For example, I'm the voice of United Healthcare right now. I record everything back there, and I really enjoy it. There was a time where it really paid the bills, but it's just been doing a little bit of a nosedive, what with AI, lowballers, underbidders, the economy, blah, blah, blah. So I've been trying desperately to continue to just build up the authoring career. And one of those ways is just simply write more books. The Dissonance Saga, I can't remember when we last talked how many books I had out at that time, but I wanted to write a trilogy. Before I knew it, it doubled in size and became a hexalogy of 6 books. And it's the best thing I've ever written. I'm working on book number 37 as we speak, but not of Dissonance, by the way. Dissonance is all done, but my 37th book. But I love writing books. I love writing a great story. I love putting it out there. It's like a Christmas gift and then waiting to see who's going to snatch it up and open it. I love it. I just absolutely love it. So I did pen the Dissonance Saga. I penned a few standalones. I penned a Christian dystopian saga called The End. I penned a few more after that. And I'm now working on a nonfiction book and a new trilogy, which is a little like, after a fashion, it's a spin-off from the Dissonance Saga. There are returning characters, I should say, from Dissonance in that,
Yeah.
called the Talisman Series.
Ooh, nice. Very nice. So could you refresh my spooky friends' memory? I mean, they can go back and listen to about the Dissonance, series and trilogy and stuff like that. But could you kind of, just give them a high overview of what it was about again?
Yeah. So Dissonance is basically a story that has roots in 2026. It starts next year. In June of 2026, these things descend from the sky. We don't know what they are. They number about 1 million. We fly our drones up to them and we see they're not crafts, probes, ships, or drones. They are beings. And they are hovering there in the sky about 90 or 50 feet above the ground all over the earth, about 1 million of them, for 90 days. We think maybe they're angelic messengers because they haven't attacked. Nobody panic. We'll find out in due time. 90 days goes by. They all wake up at exactly the same time all over the planet. They start jetting out this bluish greenish vapor around themselves. They look down and they hiss. Never a good thing to be hissed at. They attack. Within 90 more days, 85% of all mankind has been killed off, including all organic life. We call them Gorgons because, like Medusa the Gorgon, that's our common frame of reference, we find you cannot ever lock eyes with them. If you do that, it's all over. They have a telepathic paralytic, so they will immobilize you with their minds. They will eat you at their leisure, and you're going to feel, you're conscious and sentient. You're going to feel every agonizing bite without the ability to fight back. So awful way to go. And the story is really a human survival story set from 2026 all the way up to 2045, grounded in reality right here on Earth as we survive and try to fight back.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what's interesting to me is, and this is kind of a question for you too, one of the things I was watching this documentary on writers and stuff, and some of the bigger time writers. And one of the things, this writer, he said, he came into an office and, he gave him the manuscript and they're reading through the manuscript and he goes, how do you come up with this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, where do you get this from? Like, and the guy's like, I'm a writer. And,
Right.
he's like, yeah. So that'd be my question to you. Like, how do you come up with this stuff? I mean, what kind of motivates you? Are you like at at a zoo and you're like, that'd be really cool if a giraffe could, have a spiked tongue and immobilize people or, I don't know.
Yeah, keep going. I just got my next series.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because, I do vendor markets all the time. I sell my books at vendor markets. They're like craft fairs, and book fairs. And I'm asked frequently, how do you have all this in your head? And, they're asking me this while we're both perched over a table loaded with all these books that I've written and published. And I get to say, well, I don't. I mean, they're all right here now. They're not in my head anymore. You just come up with a great idea and then you kind of, you nurture it, you play with it, you harness it and see where you can go with it and write. Now, I will say I am a very organic style of writer. There's two styles of writers. There's a pantser. They fly by the seat of their pants. It's very organic. And there's a planner or a plotter. And those types are much more, index cards and flow charts and cross your I's and dot your T's, kinds of writers. And those guys really have to plot everything out. I do have some outline-ish natures about me, but ultimately I really like to write organically. And I think that helps me write faster. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's really interesting to me. Now, let me ask you this. When you were coming up with the Gorgons and everything like that, and you had a million different things you could, they could, I don't know, set people on fire. They could, just rip people's flesh off. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, okay, how do I choose the best way? Because I know there are some writers, for example, get, from the world of nature, how things attack. Like there's a sea snake, supposedly, where it it would lay on the bottom and you take little bites of it, little bites of it, little bites. and they think it's dead, and then it will just pop up and pop, and its poison is so lethal, whatever attacked it now is dead.
Right.
And I'm like, that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like, or like with alligators with death rolls. A lot of people think alligators chomp, 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 or gator, croc, whatever it is. Chomp, 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 they eat you. No, they drag you down to the bottom, roll
Drown
you
you.
over, then put you in like maybe a couple rocks or some logs, and they just let you marinate. And then they come back, it's snack time.
Unless you're a zebra. If you're a zebra, they're going to eat you alive right on the surface while you feel every bite. So maybe a croc is more like a Gorgon in that regard.
Yeah. So that's really interesting to me. And then, but my thing is, how do you then say, I get it. It's, like when you watch a movie, like I always joke with Fast and Furious, if you've seen any of those movies where they're like running cars over weird bridges, and then you're like, that can't, what is going on, right? The physics of it is nuts. But that's not the point. The point is, it's fun. It's a popcorn movie. Your brain goes, I take my brain and I set it aside. Right. But in your case with sci-fi, you really can't do that because someone, let's put us sci-fi nerds, I'm a sci-fi nerd, is going to be like, really, Aaron? Really? Okay. So with the Gorgons, when you were thinking of that, was there any scientific or technology where you're like, that's interesting?
Not based in current zoological, categories. There's nothing like that that's inspired by animals as we know them today or the categories thereof. I remember when I first started writing Dissonance, they actually were called druids, and they bore far too uncanny of a resemblance to a cross between Nazgul and Dementor. And so, been done. I didn't want to, I wanted to reinvent the wheel to a certain extent. So I didn't have the name Gorgon yet, but I did want them to be flesh and blood so that they could actually be destroyed. Because, otherwise there's no hope. And I was trying to think back into the recesses of my mind, the things that really scared me, particularly as a kid. What were the things that just, like the creature under the bed kind of thing. And I'll never forget being a little guy. I was only 8, I think. And the Ray Harryhausen stop motion photography claymation Clash of the Titans came out with Harry Hamlin as Perseus and Burgess Meredith and all those other stars. And I will never forget when Medusa, it's my favorite part of the movie to this day, when they go into, I forget what the name of the isle is, but they pass Cerberus and they go into Medusa's lair. She zeros one of Perseus's fellow soldiers. She comes into frame. It's dark in there. She comes into frame. Her eyes are eerily overlit, almost like these green luminescent flashlights. And there's this high dissonant shriek that plays while she comes right at you. And it was so terrifying, I had to run out of the room because I thought, I'm going to get frozen if I even watch this on TV. It was so dreadful and realistic. And I was like, that conjured up so much fear in me from a young age. Now, there are representations for things like that with I have a 9 and 6-year-old son. You'd think I'd remember the name. The Enderman in Minecraft, right? You can't look at an Enderman because he puts all these negative thoughts in your mind. It's similar to that in some respects, although these are predators. They're like space octopus or space lions, and it just happens to be their natural evolutionary gift that they can use to kill you off. So perfect match, and they're frightening as heck.
Yeah. Now, one of the biggest things about being an author is everybody, for lack of a better word, steals from one another, whether you know it or not, right? There's just so much stuff you just sometimes don't know. Like, crap, that was in Independence Day, or that was in Mars Attacks, or that was in 2001: Space Odyssey. Like, come on, it's just gonna happen. But when you're writing, how do you avoid those common sci-fi tropes and put a new spin on them? Because that's really hard, right? It's the same trope as the big hero. Hi, I'm Max Power, and I'm going to save the world. He's got muscles and hair, and he's good looking, and you're like, I want to write that, but really, or you don't want to. So how do you get through those tropes when you're writing and going, that's horrible?
Yeah, it's a great question. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like everything's
Yeah,
been done before. I get it. I am, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm much more cinematically inspired than I am literarily inspired.
yeah. Okay.
So if you read Dissonance, you're going to see, I wrote it very cinematically. That's why it was adapted to the screen so easily in a
Yeah.
screenplay format. But I wrote it that way. And I'm thinking, when the Gorgons arrive, there could be comparisons made to Independence Day when the UFOs come and they're hanging
Mhm.
there in the sky and there's a countdown until they attack. Very similar strains or threads are found in Dissonance to that. But the way I differentiated it is these guys didn't come down. Yes, they've got a giant mothership up there out in space, but they descended bodily through the clouds, all million of them. They're not in ships or probes or crafts. They're not coming down to shoot their green, lasers at us. They're just these, partially humanoid organic life forms that are drifting down out of the clouds. And so therein has a little bit of differential right there. But, an avid reader of Lord of the Rings, I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan, not that you could tell. And there's tips of the hat to Tolkien in
Of
Dissonance. There's
course.
tips of the hat to Stephen King. I pay homage to things that I remember from movies or from other literature as a way of saying, you inspired me. I would love to tell J.R.R. Tolkien that to his face. I cannot, so I can only
Well, you
do it
could, but it'd be a
literally.
little awkward to dig him up.
Very awkward, yeah. Ugh. And he can't talk back, so he can't say you're welcome. It'd just be
Yeah.
plain weird.
Yeah. So the other question I have for you, AI has become a hot buzz topic, right? There are going to be more and more movies. There's a movie that just is coming out with Chris Pratt that I think is really original, where this AI judge, basically, it's kind of like Minority Report, if you know what that is,
Yeah, I love that movie.
where you're guilty before you're proven innocent, right? And you got to prove you're innocent. So there's a new movie coming out. I just saw it yesterday. I thought it was really, really interesting. And this guy through the movie has to prove he's innocent. Like the AI's already said, "Oh, you're guilty," or that. But I will give you
Hmm.
a chance, and I will give you time to prove it. So that kind of reminded me. It was funny. I was thinking about you because that kind of reminded me of what you were saying with the time, with the Gorgons coming down. There's a time on this. I think it's like an hour and a half. He has, of course, the movie is an hour and a half, so he's got to figure that out. But I just thought it's fascinating because he's going through all these things. Who killed my wife? Who killed my wife? Oh, wait a minute. Is it that guy? Is it this guy? Is it that guy? And then his
Yeah,
guiltiness goes up to it reaches a certain point. Oh, he's dead. So I like that.
yeah,
However, like in your book, I don't know if you deal with this a lot, but I imagine you will moving forward. How do you deal with the ethical implications of certain sci-fi themes? Let's be honest, with God, creation, evolution, on and on and on, and things such as artificial intelligence
yeah,
or genetic engineering is becoming a big thing. Cyborgs are right around the corner, people. And we have cyborgs right now. People who lost a leg, unfortunately, maybe in an accident or over being a soldier over in the war. Yeah, they're
right.
cyborgs.
Yeah,
They're the beginning of cyborgs. So
yeah,
how do you deal with that without feeling like you're disparaging something or maybe kind of being like cuckoo?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
this
totally.
guy. Yeah.
That's a great question. I think one of the nice things about science fiction is that it is fiction. It's basically an imaginary view of a relevant topic. And so I think one of the best quotes ever in any movie or literature, because obviously Michael Crichton had it in his book, I believe. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've read it. But Dr. Ian
Yeah.
Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum says, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Correct.
And absolutely love that line. That's a dilemma that a lot of people will face in technology, particularly AI. It's a great relevant question to ask in light of AI, genetic engineering. But the nice thing with fiction, and particularly science fiction, is you can take an off ramp from the harsh realities of the current predicament or the current dilemma and imagine what it could be like if you either solved it or it ran amok, right? And then you just
Right.
kind of explore that to a pretend imaginary sense. I think it's good fodder for creativity, number one, but also figuring out, how you navigate it. With AI, my thoughts and my position remains the same if we talked about it in the last time. I'm not a fan of AI.
Yeah.
I posted a video recently where I actually ran an experimental prompt on Grok for ideas for the Talisman series. And it generated 5 of them, gave me, moral ambiguity struggles and character breakdowns and blah, blah, blah. 5 of them. I said, I don't like this. Okay, try it again. Give me 5 more. I got the other 5, didn't like them. And man, these suck. Tried it one last time, 5 more, hated it. It was stupid. And then I just finally said, you know what? I'm going to do this myself. And I went back and I love what I came up with. Granted, I love it even more because there's characters from Dissonance that come back in the Talisman series. It's the Dissonance verse or the Ryan verse, or the Aaron verse. I love that, but I love what I came up with instead of AI. Yeah. Genetic engineering, I think, is a really polarizing topic as well. And I think it's great fodder for exploitation in a novel. I actually just wrote book number 35, I believe, was called The Phoenix Experiment. And it is, it deals with AI, sentient AI gone wrong, run amok. But you also have, it's kind of like Ash versus Bishop from Alien and Aliens. So one is good, one is bad, and they are the polar opposites. And it's really interesting to see what happens when you pit them against each other. One's going to win, and then the other is, and then the other is. And who's going to win out in the end? Yeah. I loved addressing that. It wasn't a referendum on AI, but I really liked addressing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So as an author, you struggle with some big questions of like, where is this going? Is this going to be, there's a bright future and just everybody stick together? Or is this going to be, we're going to shit and it's going to get worse? So what big questions are you exploring with the Dissonance series and the Talisman series, obviously, but are you exploring through the nature of reality and what happens to society facing a crisis? Because this is a crisis. Like, this is like, I equated to, and not to cut you off, Aaron, but I equated to, and unfortunately, remember when 9/11 happened? Everybody, one way or another, was involved. I don't care if you were a farmer in Iowa, tending your crops, or you were some guy, I don't know, hanging out at a frat house, what I mean? Just having a good old time. Yeah. That, to me, is kind of, I don't want to say that's it, because that's not it, but like having these Gorgons come down and seeing your doom happening before you. That's exactly what happened in there. You saw the buildings, right? It wasn't like, they went down, bam. No, it was like smash. Whoa, a plane hit it? Whoa, what's going on? Oh, another plane hit? Whoa. And it was happening real time, and you're watching this going, what's going on? Yeah. And then the buildings come down. Kind of like the Gorgons. And like, how do you, this is a crisis. Like, how do you write that to have the audience kind of understand, like, this is the nature of reality and what's going to happen in this crisis? Like,
questions. One of the questions for just going back to the Phoenix Experiment is, can technology heal grief? Because one of these days, someone is going to come up with some technological invention that everybody's going to rally behind and say, hey, now we don't have to be sad anymore. Grieving, Dr. Dan Allender says, all addiction is failure to grieve. We have to grieve, cleanse, and go through those 4 stages of grief. So important. So can technology handle grief? Isn't so much the question, or heal grief isn't so much the question. Should technology heal grief is the question. Should we, or should we just allow ourselves to grieve? We don't have to anesthetize and take care of everything and medicate our pain away. With 9/11, I remember it like it was yesterday. I wrote Forecast. It's a 9/11 historical fiction thriller that sees 9/11 entirely prevented. It never happens, and all those lives are saved. I wrote it very cathartically. It was a very therapeutic piece of work for me to write, because I would love a world where that doesn't happen. It's not possible anymore. It is part of history. It's inexorable from our history. But it gives you a little bit of a way to remember, to reflect. I think what's sad about today in our current cancel culture is things get not just put in a closet, but they get erased and removed. because somebody's going to get triggered somewhere. It's like, with all due respect to people who have maybe lost somebody, you want to be sensitive to that, yes. But we don't have to completely whitewash everything around us so that nobody gets hurt. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Martin Luther King said that. And
Right.
so, I think that we need to deal with some of the emotions around 9/11, some of the emotions around AI, not just go, oh, it'll be okay, and, push it aside. There's all kinds of moral quandaries we're always going to have to deal with. I love how fiction gives us a way to encounter those and
Yeah,
handle them.
absolutely. And so when you're also doing this, do you ever take pause to see, like, is any of this plausible? Or do you just like keep kind of going and being like, it's
No,
sci-fi? I mean, come on.
yeah, I wrote the slide. The slide, boy, you talk about being cinematically inspired. The slide came to me in a fusion of, I don't know if you remember Multiplicity, that movie with Michael Keaton.
Yes. Yeah.
So that one, and the fly with Jeff Goldblum. So, you put them together and you get, teleportation, and things could go wrong. It was just going to be a novel about what could go wrong. It was almost going to be a referendum on the dangers of teleportation technology. I think there are inherent dangers there. But, we're not there yet. That's what the novel was going to focus on. But I thought, it's a little too far off into the future. I don't know that people will be able to relate to this, but they can relate to impending doom. So here you have a protagonist who has developed, much like Jeff Goldblum, in his apartment, teleportation technology and chambers that are like Jeff Goldblum's pods, and the teleportation is a success. He goes through tests. He tests his dog. He tests birds. He tests finally himself, musters up the courage to test himself. Very reminiscent of The Fly. There's no creature that gets in there and gets accidentally spliced together. But then you start to see the whole picture of, is this relevant? It is relevant if a supermassive black hole is on its way to the Milky Way galaxy and is going to destroy
Mhm.
everything. Could we teleport somewhere else, away from Earth, away from the Milky Way galaxy? And so that set a very cool precedent in my mind for imagining the scope of what teleportation technology could do.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking on that, um, technology and maybe some themes and some social commentary in your books. Like, what, I guess, do you have, I don't want to say an agenda, that's a wrong word. But like, what does your story say about the current world and the future of humanity? Like, is that something you go in being like, yep, this is where I'm going, or does this kind of just flows and just comes out,
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. I mean, I don't intend any of my books to be a referendum on anything.
Okay.
But yeah, there are definitely social issues that we all face, and I think, right now almost every single one of my novels has a kernel of thematic depth in it that I think you could apply to whatever we're going through right now, and that kernel is hope. You subtract hope from any situation, and people are bereft of willingness to survive, to push through, to win. I love what President Snow says in The Hunger Games. He says, he's talking to Seneca Crane, the original game maker, and he says, hope, it is the only thing stronger than fear. Fear keeps us in our place. Fear turns to anger. Anger turns to hate. Hate turns to suffering. The prophet Yoda said that. Uh, Fear keeps us immobilized. Hope gets us out of that rigor mortis and encourages us to take risks and get out there and try to last and survive and thrive. So yes, there's a kernel of truth in all of my novels that all really centers around hope. Without hope, everything sucks, and it will suck forever.
Yeah.
With hope, you can take action, you can do monumental things. There is a way out of this current conundrum. I really value hope being a central core message of any of my novels.
Yeah. But then how do you, because conflict and tension, that's part of being an author. You can't just have everybody, like I said, skipping along and unicorns and lollipops.
Yeah.
Everybody sharing picnics. What do you do? Because this is very true in today's world. There's the right and the left, right?
Mhm.
And well, the middle, conservative, whatever you want to say it. And this is a political podcast, obviously. And there's always someone who says, like you said, hey, there's hope, guys. We can get through it. And everybody, there's another person saying, nope, we're never going to get through this. And then there's a third person saying, only if it's done my way,
Right.
right? There's hope my way. So if you do it my way, and I take this a lot from, I've stopped watching it, but like Walking Dead and stuff. Walking Dead was about, okay, there's a common goal. There's zombies. They're getting worse. We got to kill the zombies. However, in there's different power plays. There's different kingdoms who are trying to establish themselves, right? Because
Right.
they feel what they need to do is the best solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance that in your books when you're writing about, okay, the Gorgons coming down? Maybe somebody, and maybe you already have that because I apologize, I haven't read all the book yet. But is there people in there who like, maybe they're not so bad. Maybe we can use them for something. Maybe we can manipulate them.
Yeah, well, one of the central messages of the Dissonance Saga really is that mankind is always the worst enemy of mankind. Yes, it's an alien invasion saga. I mean, that's inexorable. It is an alien invasion saga. And so you have to deal with these accursed nuisances of beings that are here and they own the planet now. You have to deal with that. And that's unpleasant as it is. But what's even more unpleasant is that we've got this humanity on the brink of extinction after 16 years of alien occupation. You would think by that time we would all be working together. We would all be, getting along and working so hard to kick these things to the curb. But it just doesn't happen that way. There are people always self-absorbed, putting themselves forward, throwing monkey wrenches into the works.
Yes.
And we have to deal with them. And so it's kind of like the Rodney King cry, can we all get along?
Right.
And it's just hard when we don't. That becomes the worst problem. So
yeah, and I think that's something that, again, it's kind of a trope per se. There's always a guy like, since we're both movie people, I'll use Die Hard. One of my favorite scenes in Die Hard, I know it's not sci-fi, but the sales guy goes in there and tries to convince Hans Gruber that he's his friend and he's going to help everything and he'll smooth this out and they'll get their money. And Don McClane's like, no, you idiot. He's going to kill you.
Yeah. What are you doing?
He thinks whatever, it's too much or you're going to get us both killed. And there's always people like that, right? With the person just, why are you attacking this, whether it be a Gorgon or state or whatever, when you know it's not going to work, yet in your mind you think it works because whatever your delusion or anything. And I think that's an interesting thing, as an author. Like, do you put that in the book? Do you make it a main thing? Do you just say like, okay, how am I gonna fit that in? Because that's important, right? It's just people like that. We meet them every day.
Yep. Yeah, there are team players and there's just lone rangers, and you just have to kind of decide and hope for the best that we're all going to work together. I think one of the greatest things is there is a character in the Dissonance Saga in particular that basically turns sides. He doesn't know that he's necessarily on the wrong side, but he comes back. And so there's that arc that's always so rewarding in the end, where you think you've lost this accomplice, this ally, this person who was faithful to you and everybody else for so long. Then that arc brings them back. And it's restorative. It's very, very redemptive to see them come back. It's not always going to be that way. There are going to be people who they're won over to the dark side, and they just don't get it. And you are so mad and perplexed why they don't get it,
Yeah.
Everybody else knows that this person is evil. Why are you supporting them? And they don't understand that. No, they're good and you're evil.
Yeah, right. And the most common with that is Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, right? Is they're still good in him, and everybody's like, he just wiped out a planet of innocent people. No, there's still some good in him. No,
yeah,
I know there is.
Even before that, remember Anakin's dilemma?
Yeah,
he's talking with Padme, and she says the Sith. Oh no, he's talking with Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith, and Obi-Wan says, the Sith are evil, or Chancellor Palpatine is evil. And Anakin goes, in my opinion, the Jedi are evil. Adolf Hitler thought he was right. He thought he was the good guy. So yeah, there's people that are just deluded.
Yeah, there's just people who think they're right. And, all these severe tragedies in the world, everyone, I was right. You can go down the line. No, I'm right. So we're nerding out here. I love it. Of a nerd podcast. So can you tell me, Aaron, about or share a moment with me from your personal life that inspired a scene or character in your book.
Well, I mean, the first thing that I jumped to is the proposal between Allie and Jet. It's a spoiler, but this was released in May of 2024. So by now, it's whatever. It's not perfect. It's full of, silliness, and it's clumsy. And so I look at my own proposal a little bit that way with my wife. So I like the fact that things aren't squeaky clean. And that's the way that Dissonance is. It's more Star Wars with oil dripping out of the panelization of the Millennium Falcon, as opposed to squeaky clean white antiseptic walls of the Starship Enterprise. And there's not a trace of dust anywhere. I like dirt under the nails, and I like the
Sure.
colonial marines from Aliens, grimy. So that would be one. I'm a natural cynic. Some people are a natural blonde. I'm a natural cynic. And that's really mirrored in Cameron Jet Shipley in Dissonance Volume 1 Reality. And he has to make that move to trust as the series goes on. There's too many to list because I constantly reference in the saga how he's a cynic. And that's very much a reflection of me as well.
Yeah. And I hear you. I'm a realistic, positive person. Something's probably going to go wrong, but let's work it out. One of the biggest things for writers is you write a scene. Oh man, this is the greatest thing I've ever written. I'm going to have a beer or champagne or whatever. And then you come back the next morning and go, what the hell did I just do? How do you cut that out? How do you take that, just, oh my God, that just hurtful, painful thing to be like, I got to cut this scene? How do you come across that?
I'm just going to say, there are some people that struggle with writer's block, and there are other people that are naysayers and say it doesn't exist. And I can't stand it when people say that, because of course it exists. It's a phenomenon. You can't write. I struggled with writer's block for the beginning of the Talisman series. I wasn't sure which direction I wanted it to go. But the time that sticks out in my head the most is when I wrote Forecast, and the protagonist, Roland Bishop, is struck by lightning, and I had him go in a direction where he prevents a crime, but he does so in a very superheroistic fashion. And he's got lightning in his body, so now he's able to electrocute someone. He's welling up with blue fire inside him, and he's combusting. And I thought, do I want to go? I mean, with all the superhero fatigue that we're experiencing in Marvel and all that stuff, and DC and everything, do I really want to go down this path? But I just followed it. And it was exactly the right direction to go. But as I'm writing it, I'm going, I don't know, dude. Is this really wait a minute? But by the time you get to the end of the book, you go, that Aaron Ryan guy is brilliant, because this needed to happen where I was struggling with this writing part in order for this massive, awesome conclusion to happen. And Roland Bishop, in and of himself, as a single solitary human, would not have been able feasibly to thwart the plans of 19 hijackers across 4 different planes. He wouldn't have been able to. But Roland Bishop, imbued with incredible powers, yes. So he did need to have some powers.
Yeah. And that's interesting to me because, again, having certain powers can be, in a book, you have fun, but you look through the character. As a writer, you can't think about, well, I'm going to give him powers. You got to think about what those powers mean, right?
Exactly. What are they for?
What is he going to do? So, like obviously, a lot of superheroes, they have so much. I mean, being a Jedi Knight, well, I'm going to go back to this. I always say this. I'm sorry to go off on a little tangent here, but I would hate to be Batman. I would absolutely hate it because there's no way you get out of that. You're trapped forever because you're like, oh, I'm going to take a vacation. Oh, shit. The Joker's starting something new again. Back. And then, that's why I always like where a lot of graphic novels go with the character. And maybe you will do this. I don't know if you do this with a character right now, where you just finally, like, there's the Dark Knight series, Dark Knight Returns, where Batman's this older gentleman and he's insane and he's literally just killing people left and right, basically, or hurting them. I should say, I don't think he's killing people. I have to go back, but he's hurting people. Badly. And because he's just gone. His mind is just frazzled. because he's just, you know what I mean? And I think that's really interesting in the character, right? It gets to that point. Like, where do they stop? Where it's just like, how many people can I say?
Yeah, the humanity of him. I think you have to visit that humanity because you need to keep the character grounded and attainable to your human readers. One of the things, though, that I can't stand, and I think movies sometimes go far too far with this, is, well, you can't see behind my door there, but I have Gandalf the Grey's big brown staff. It's life size. It's incredible. It's thick. It's heavy.
Nice.
Gandalf was very humanized. Ian McKellen's portrayal of him was spot on, but he's bound to a script that
Right.
he has to comply with. And he was very humanized. They took some of his best lines and attributed them to Aragorn or whoever else. They subtracted him of some of his power and made him more of a consultant, in some respects.
Yeah.
And no, this guy was one of the Maiar. He was 3,000 years old. And he was incredibly powerful. So he was a spirit, trapped inside a body, especially when he came back as Gandalf the White. He was even more powerful. And so oftentimes the creators can err in making them too human, and then you lose the majesty or the ability or the magnanimity of that character because you've brought him so down to earth.
Yeah.
It's necessary because then it keeps me relating to that character. This is why in my sci-fi, I'm a sci-fi enthusiast at heart. That's my branding. And I incorporate a lot of heart because I want the human struggle at the center. Whoever it is, I want you to relate, go, I get that, and that keeps the reader engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always love asking authors this. What character have you written that you just never put him in a series? Like, I want to put him in, but he's just not developed or whatever it might be. Is there any character where you're like, oh, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to do a deep dive on all of them. I don't know. I love all of my characters, but especially the ones in Dissonance and the End. I love the androids in the Phoenix Experiment because they are, of course, synthetic people. They're not. That's the wrong word. They're synthetic life forms, and that itself is the wrong word as well because they're not life forms. They're synthetic machines. I think they're so incredibly alluring and mysterious and interesting. But I certainly couldn't do a standalone novel on Stygius Cryptus, the Anthro-Meta model from the Phoenix Experiment, or Baryonyx Talicus, the opposing Anthro-Meta model in the Phoenix Experiment. They just don't have that depth of life or backstory or character to exploit.
Yeah, yeah. The other question, and this is my favorite question to ask authors, is there anything that you wish you would have written? Is there anything out there you went, man?
Yeah, definitely the Lord of the Rings and definitely the Hunger Games. I love both.
And why?
Well, the Lord of the Rings is the first thing that I remember reading as a young teenager, and in fact, probably even earlier than that. I just remember being so blown away. Every page was like, what? It was so grand and deep and wide and high and long.
Yeah.
All the characters, you loved them. All the lands, you loved them. All the languages, you loved them. Everything was perfect about Lord of the Rings. The Hunger Games, I just love that struggle almost unto despair. This is where hope meets its match in despair because President Snow's got all the power, and this is a sick, twisted thing that they do that they've put under the guise of nobility. They process these poor, chosen, conscripted warriors that aren't warriors to kill each other, fight to the death, and there's no way out for them. So they just have to jump into that water and be carried down the tide and just do what they must. It's such a compelling story, though, and you just love the victory in the end.
Yeah, right? And I just think that's truly amazing with stories like that where they bring you. I was just rewatching the extended version of Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Is there any other version? I don't think so.
Yeah. There are some things in there where I'm like, okay, really? It's kind of like they're having a ham sandwich together. Not that they are, but you know what I mean? It's like a scene where, hi, how are you? I'm doing well. Do you know that Lord of Oregon, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Good. He likes blue. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's that simple, but you know what I mean? It's like, did that really need to be in there that I know that some guy like stepped on a frog one day and like like okay.
That's J.R.R. Tolkien would take like 3 paragraphs to describe a rock,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
he believed in his world so much. That's why.
Exactly. I always say one of the biggest things is I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan and a Rod Serling fan. I
Mm,
would do anything just to be a fly on the wall. Like Twilight Zone to me is still to this day
amazing.
the epitome, the gold standard, because it's he back in the day you don't have a lot of effects, you don't have whatever, and you got to think of like, what if I have a camera that turns people and shows them like what's going to happen in the future? You know what I mean? Like, oh, you take a picture and then the lady's flying out the window or whatever, and you're like, and then it
Yeah.
happened, you
Yeah.
know. And one of my favorite scenes, and this is just genius, where there was this criminal and he's in and sorry, going off a tangent really good really quickly, but there's this criminal and he's in this place which he thinks is heaven because he's winning at gambling. He's got all the dames and he's got money and liquor and he's robbing places and getting all this money. And then at the end he goes, hey, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. This is heaven. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a scumbag and everything. And the guy goes, why do you think this was heaven? And then you realize he's in hell,
Yeah.
because he's
Nice.
getting, you know what I mean? Because and I love that, that line of like, why do you think you're in heaven? What
The
makes you think you're in
twists.
heaven? And,
Yeah.
and if you think about it, that's very true to life. If just everything goes right for you, a lot of people, oh, that'd be nice. But after a while, you'd be like, oh my God,
Mm,
enough's enough.
right.
Like it just because there's no challenge, there's nothing going on. And I think that's really interesting to like your books, there's a challenge of these Gorgons coming down. Like if they just said, hey, how you doing? We're gonna fix everything. We're gonna fix your medical, your your infrastructure. You'd be, oh, this is great. By the way, we make great pizzas, so here you go too. You'd be like,
Okay. Yeah.
oh, it'd be funny though, but not necessarily what people want to read. So let's talk about your new series and what's that all about?
So the Talisman series, so this is something where I know that I totally differ from a lot of authors out there. I like to design the cover first. So if I get an idea for a new series, it's usually the title and the cover. And I will envision the cover and I'll design it and basically like reverse engineer it. That gives me something, it gives me forward momentum. It gives me a trajectory and a goal to work forward to and basically, advance towards. As a dissonance aficionado, I mean, I wrote my own series and I love it.
Yeah.
This I always think is over and then it comes calling again. But the protagonists that are in Dissonance on here, all these guys, some of them are going to make their way into the Talisman series because it's set in the same Earth, it's set in the same time frame, they're beloved characters by many. And so it's really hard to get away and kind of exercise yourself from a story that you love. I had a hard time envisioning what it was going to be until I realized there's a great character in this saga whose backstory I have not mined enough or properly. And so he can be the new protagonist of the Talisman series. So the Talisman series is one of those protagonists. He makes a cosmic deal with some strange forces. You'll find out who they are by book 3. He has lost his wife. He's a former war hero. He's lost his wife, and these cosmic forces have offered him a bargain. Save 1,000 lives, and we will return your wife to you. We will resurrect her from the dead. And so he is an indentured servant in this role of the talisman. He's imbued with these powers. He's got a suit. He's leaves these trinkets behind, everywhere he goes when he rescues someone. They are the talisman, figures. But unbeknownst to him, there is, and then he finds out eventually, there is a counterforce that used to be a talisman, but renounced his charge. And so his love stayed dead. And he is bitter. He's angry. And he wants revenge on not just the talisman, but they're called the Aetherium Axis, who bestowed these powers upon these poor witless humans. He wants revenge against him and them, and so he's going to kill him, gain his powers, kill them. And so he's being stalked by a reporter. He's being stalked by this evil force, and it ends with a very cliffhangery, like, oh, crap moment. at the end of book 1. So sets the stage for the rest of them.
I love it. I love it. That sounds, looking forward to that. That sounds so interesting.
Yeah.
Again, it's just something I compliment you on. You come up with these great ideas to keep sci-fi out there too, because that's a big thing too.
Woo.
Sci-fi has to stay out there for it to
Yeah.
survive. And I know people argue Marvel, sci-fi. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. But before we wrap up here, what's one character you would love to have a beer with? These are in your books, by the way. Or maybe go out to dinner with. Just pick their brain.
Yeah. I love Pastor Rosie. Pastor Rosie is I believe it is John Grisham who has a character named Denton Voiles. And
Okay.
Denton Voiles travels between all of his books. First, he's the DA, then he's the Attorney General, then he's the head of the FBI. And it's this name that John Grisham likes to carry over into his other novels. For me, that's Pastor Rosie. So Pastor Rosie Campion is a spiritual advisor to virtually everybody in the saga in Dissonance. And she has appeared in Forecast. She is a key player in the Phoenix Experiment. She is in the Slide. She is of sorts in the end, and she will be in Talisman. So really exciting to see all of that come together. But man, she's very wise and very maternal and elderly. And you love talking to a person like that is so crowned with wisdom, where you're like, how do you see with such clear eyes, and help everyone see whose vision is murky? I love people like that. I'm impressed by them.
Yeah. And then question to go along with that, how about just from literary history, what one character would you love to?
Gandalf. Absolutely Gandalf. I just want to touch his cloak. I want to touch his cloak. I want to touch his hair. I want to hug
That's
him.
creepy. That's
Oh,
creepy.
it's fine. It's fine. I would hold on to that cloak and I'd never let go, baby. I was like, can I please wear it?
Can you let me have it? Gandalf is always interesting to me, just because maybe I remember the books and everything like that, but it always made me, the only scene in that whole trilogy where you not to say that you didn't see other times, but where you saw his full power when he was on taking out the Balrog. It was a Balrog, the demon. I always screw that
The
up.
Balrog. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's saying you shall not pass and stuff. And then you're like, damn, this guy's for real, And he did some with the Nazgul, where he's shining that light and stuff like that. But I thought in some of the scenes where he's like fighting and everything, I'm like, couldn't he just been like zap, zippity zoop and be like destroyed? I don't know. You tell me.
That's what I said. That's what I was saying earlier, is they humanized him too much. I love in the Lord of the Rings, Gandalf and the Fellowship are in the Chamber of Mazarbul, and they found Balin's tomb. Balin, I can't believe I said it like that. They found Balin's tomb. That's shades of the 1978 Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings creeping through. They found Balin's tomb, and now here comes a Balrog, here comes cave trolls and orcs and all that stuff. Gandalf goes and he closes the door. He says, "Run, everybody run." Closes the door. He seals it with a spell, and then he's holding the door, and something grabs the handle of the door on the other side, and he says, "It perceived me in my spell. I had to speak a word of command with a capital C. I had to speak a word of command. It nearly broke me." But it was like, I could read that sentence over and over and over again.
Right.
That's Gandalf's power at work, and they deprived him of that to some level in the movies, which was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to me. And then I have one other question for you. I'm guessing you're already going to say this. If you could live in any sci-fi world, where would it be? I'm guessing what's it going to be, but go ahead. I thought you were going to say Hobbits.
Middle Earth.
The Shire, and I was like, come on.
No, this is the world of 2026 to 2045. Granted, 3 of them are set in 2042. I would want to be in that world, and I would want to meet my characters. I took a trip to Clarksville, Tennessee, and Nashville and Blue Spring, Kentucky in Labor Day last year. And I had not been there prior to writing Dissonance, which is set there, among other locations. I sculpted this story using, Google Street View and aerial view and learning where everything goes. But to be there, absolutely surreal. Now, my characters, they do exist, okay? And they're in my mind and they're in my heart. So to be there and to know that this is where I put them was absolutely like it was such a straddling the line between reality and fantasy. But it was so cool. This is where it
Yeah.
happened. I
Yeah,
loved
yeah.
it.
Yeah. So people who are looking to get your books and everything, before you tell them where they can.
It is an alien invasion saga, yes, but it is a human survival story even more. And the characters are full and the story is full of thematic depth. The aliens, the Gorgons, are fantastically terrifying. They are deadly evil. But is mankind even worse? And you're going to love the characters. You actually get to grow up with the characters from, as young as, 2 years old all the way up to you've got 70-year-olds. But the young ones, you grow up with them in the saga.
Sure.
And you live with them and love with them and learn with them.
Just wrapping up here, I've taken so much of your time. I wish I could take more, but I understand what's coming up. Where can they find you? Give them the
Yeah.
spiel.
Well, still working very hard at pitching the screenplay for Dissonance Volume 1 Reality to major studios.
Great. Yeah,
Yep,
I was going
that
to ask you
one's
that.
I've got The End adapted for the screen as well, and that's won entrance into several film festivals and won some awards. Put me on IMDb.
Nice.
Forecast, the 9/11 novel, has been adapted for the screen. That's been entered into some film festivals as well. So that's awesome, and still waiting to hear on all those. Talisman is underway. I'm a few days probably away from publishing a book called "You're Going Straight to Helen in a Handbasket," and then the Talisman, is what I'll be working on after that. The other two installments, but they can always go to authoraaronryan.com and subscribe to the blog, or they can go to authoraaronryangroup.com, which takes them to my exclusive Facebook group where they'll find discount codes, giveaways, news on the screenplays, news on appearances, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always so grateful for the readership and the support.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said before, I'll say it again, please support Aaron and other independent authors out there. Do your best to, go out there and, get the books or just talk or just have interactions, just like his pages and stuff, because that will move him up into the algorithms and whatever the heck they're doing to us nowadays to get him more notoriety and give him more the prestige that I think he needs and definitely deserves. So thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Always amazing time. Like I said, I wish I could have you on more, and I'll have you on again because I'm sure you come up with another book series that will blow my mind and make me go, yeah, this guy's pretty good.
Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure, and I really appreciate it, John.
You betcha. And again, stay spooky, people. We have Halloween coming up. So I know this isn't Halloween, but still go back in, good sci-fi book. Sometimes change the pace up,
Yeah. Hey, the Talisman, the first installment in Talisman called Subterfuge is publishing on Halloween. So there you go.
All right. Well, I'll make sure I have all the links in there when this episode comes out. So you can go out there and visit his page and, ask him questions and just find out, what's coming up next. So hopefully you can learn a little bit more about Aaron. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. It was great to talk to you. You have a good one, buddy.
You too.
Bye-bye.